Alright, in this video I'm going to be doing a power steering fluid change on my 2012 Nissan Pathfinder. Power steering reservoir is right there. Nissan said this costs about 200 bucks to do at the dealership, but I think I paid maybe 25 bucks for fluid. That line right there is the line that goes to the pump. So I'm going to leave that line connected throughout this process, and there's another line that comes off the bottom of the reservoir, and that is the one that I'm going to disconnect, and that is the return line. So I got 2 liters of automatic transmission fluid, which is what they gave me. Drip pan, some gloves, I got scissors. I'm using this little syringe for oral use only. Definitely not after this. And then I picked up some hose from my own area code, and then that's about it. I got some shop towels, some jacks, that kind of stuff. Anyway, like and subscribe if you like the content. And I do put some of this in fast motion. So the first thing I'm going to do is suck as much of the power steering fluid out of the reservoir as I can with the syringe. And the reason I'm doing that is because when I take the return hose off the bottom of the reservoir, it'll just be less power steering fluid that's going to dump out the bottom of the reservoir on me. So once I've got as much as I can get out with the syringe, I'm just going to lift the power steering reservoir off its bracket. The hoses are pretty tight, I found, so it is a little difficult to get the reservoir off, but it's doable. Gave it a little pry with the screwdriver, then got both hands in there. Like I said, it's just because the hoses are connected, they're a little bit tight, but it's okay. It's not the hardest thing in the world to remove. Now that the reservoir is separated, I can get at the hose clamp that's coming off the bottom here. So I'm just going to reach in there with needle nose pliers, remove the hose clamp, and then pull the hose off. I don't really get in there with a good camera angle because all you're going to see is my hands anyway. But like I said, I use a pair of needle nose pliers. And the other thing I do is put a bunch of newspapers underneath the reservoir and then a bit of shop towel as well. And that captures the 10 or 20 milliliters that are still in the reservoir and dumps out when I remove the hose from the bottom of the reservoir. So a bit of a pain. One thing I'm going to point out here is don't do this while the engine's still kind of hot, because you're going to be touching some of the coolant lines most likely. And I kind of burnt my hand a little bit, but that's okay. It's all for YouTube and I'm sure it's pensionable. So there you go. Hoses are off. And you can see that I've got some of the shop towels and stuff. And that is the radiator line that's a little bit close to where you're going to be working, so just be careful with that if you just drove your vehicle. Okay, now that all that's off, what I'm going to do is hook up some of the clear hose. So I'm putting this one small piece, I just cut a little piece off there, and I want that as high as the reservoir, because when I fill the reservoir up, if I don't have that hose, it's just going to dump out the bottom of the reservoir again. So I want that hose at least the height of the reservoir, and that hose is 3/8 internal, 1/2 inch external. I also got this little hose connector, and I got all the hose and connectors at Lowe's actually. And then I just plugged that hose connector into the hose that is the return line. So whole system looks like that. I got that one little piece connected to the reservoir. So that's just so I could put new fluid in the reservoir. And then I got the other piece connected to the return line so that when I'm moving the steering wheel back and forth, it's going to push the fluid up that hose and out the return line. And I'll just throw the drip pan just out here in front of the vehicle. And I think that hose cost $10 Canadian, if anyone's interested. So now I'm going to take the Nissan ATF, and it's a Canadian version. I think it's the same as Matic D. Anyway, it's what they told me the vehicle uses at the Nissan dealership. I did have Matic S in my garage, but I didn't want to use it because obviously there's a difference between Matic D, Matic S. I don't know if they're compatible for the power steering. Anyway, you can see the ATF in the line that I've got connected to the reservoir. Now I'm just going to go inside the vehicle and turn the steering wheel fully left and then fully right, basically just going lock to lock, and I do that twice. And I'm going to be honest, this fluid looks like it's actually in pretty good condition. I've never done the fluid change on this. I don't know if it was done before, but the vehicle has 250,000 kilometers, which is getting a little high mileage, I guess. So I do it. It only cost me about $30 in ATF fluid, so it's really not that bad. And then I just keep coming back to the reservoir and putting in about 200 or 300 milliliters at a time, and then just move the steering wheel from one lock to the other lock, and then go back to the reservoir and fill it back up. So I do have it in fast motion here, so it'll speed things up a little bit. But like I said, just go lock to lock a couple times. It'll pull the new power steering fluid through and push the old power steering fluid out. And for this, I found 2 liters was the correct amount. I would say after 1 full liter goes through, you're only really pushing the new power steering fluid through at that point. And then you could just use the second bottle of power steering fluid to top up the reservoir and that kind of thing. So I definitely don't think that 3 liters would be required to do this job. And just based on that close-up, you can see that the fluid coming out is pretty similar looking to the fluid going in. So again, off camera, I am going to reconnect that hose and put the hose clamp back on. Like I said, you're just not going to see anything other than my hands, so I didn't really bother filming it. But suffice it to say, I do put the hose back on. And there's some visual proof. Hose is back in place, and you can see the hose clamp is back in place as well. And now I'm just going to put the power steering fluid reservoir just back into its mount on the vehicle. And now before turning the vehicle from lock to lock, I'm just going to fill the power steering fluid reservoir pretty much as full as it'll go. And then I'm going to go back into the vehicle and turn the wheels from lock to lock, and that's going to help get any air bubbles out. So there you go, you can see it's at max hot level. And I'm just turning the wheels fully to the right and then fully to the left. Pretty straightforward. You do need the key into the on position, but not vehicle on. And I didn't show it, but I do have the vehicle jacked up on both sides in the front, and I do have blocks under the rear tires. I do have a sloped driveway, and the vehicle parking brake is on as well. So there you go, going back and forth from lock to lock. I think I did it twice. And then I'll just go back out, check the fluid level. You can see that it dropped about 1 inch. It went from max hot just to max cold level. So now I will just throw some more of the ATF in and just do it again. So filled it back up, went lock to lock 3 or 4 more times, checked the level, and nothing really else came out. And now I start the vehicle. The vehicle's front end is still jacked up, so I can go lock to lock without grinding the tires into the driveway. And you can see once I started the vehicle, a lot more air must have come out of the system, and it went from max hot all the way down to minimum level. So about a full inch of power steering fluid out of the reservoir dipped down once I started it. So I'll just top it up again with the ATF and go back in and go lock to lock a few more times. I'm going to say I probably went from side to side 10 times before I started the vehicle, and once I had the vehicle running, I probably went side to side 10 more times. But really after that first refill, I didn't find that there was much air in the system anymore. So I turn off the vehicle, check the level of power steering fluid. It looks good. Obviously it's at the cold level because I didn't really drive it anywhere. Put that cap back on. That cap goes on like crap, by the way, not a very good system. I've got about 200 milliliters left of the ATF fluid, and then I just went for a drive, maybe 15-20 minutes, found a nice flat parking lot, and then just checked the level of the fluid again, and it didn't move. It's right on that full cold line. And I will periodically check it throughout the week and next time I fuel up, but I think it's going to be good to go. Anyway, pretty fast, pretty easy, a little messy, but overall not a bad job. Thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.